Hi, everyone. So it has been a while since our last episode with myself, Marissa True, and my co-host, Stu Elms. Hey, Stu, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Not too shabby, dealing with a bit of jet lag, but we're still moving. So today we are back with a very special guest. With us, we have Dr. Jeff Groff, who is a professor of physics. He is the chairperson of the Department of Environmental and Physical Sciences at Shepherd University. He is also a Tezos Commons Grantee, which is a large chunk of what we are going to discuss today. So first of all, hey, Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. So, as mentioned, you are the recipient of a grant from the Tezos Commons Small Grants Program. And with that grant, you're developing something called the Tezio Wallet, which is a new Tezos based wallet using, I'm going to say Arduino, forgive my pronunciation,
Yes.
hardware. Um, but before we actually dig into that product, I want to learn a little bit more about you.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us a bit more about your background and also when you
Sure.
actually ventured into the world of blockchain?
Sure, yes. So I currently live near Shepherdstown, West Virginia, United States, and I am a professor at Shepherd University. I mainly teach physics and environmental science classes, but I do teach some courses like geographic information systems and a course on Arduino programming, which is a big part of this project I'm working on. I in grad school I mainly studied. I went to the College of William and Mary in Virginia, and my research was mainly theoretical modeling of intracellular biophysical processes involving chemical signaling. And my degree is in applied science, which is a mixture of engineering and material science and computational science and a whole mix of things. So I have a very interdisciplinary background. Well, blockchain. Well, uh, I, I really got interested in blockchain probably about 2017, and Tezos specifically just a few years ago, around spring of 2000, and um, I really was, drawn to uh, Tezos for a number of reasons, but I sort of realized that um, the governance protocol, the governance process, was going to be a big deal for blockchain, um, and I saw that the Tezos approach to governance as being a very a standout feature of the blockchain. Um, but also the community. There's there's just a lot of interesting people that are doing work in Tezos, um, and so it's a good community to be a part of. Um, so um, the, this particular project in particular sort of had its roots in. I'm also a beekeeper, and I was working on a project to do some environmental monitoring inside of beehives. I can
Mhm.
actually have one right here. I built this is a frame. It goes in the beehive, and it's hard to see, but if I angle it, 3D printed substrate here covered in wax that they'll build comb on, and then there's this array of temperature sensors. So this is all built on top of a custom circuit board that I made, and the goal was to do this monitoring of the environmental situation inside of the beehive, and it was a very challenging project, and it's a very inhospitable environment for electronics. But in the process of doing this, I realized that you need to have some way of if you have a lot of these sensors, um, guaranteeing the provenance of the data that they're gathering.
Mhm.
And so it occurred to me that maybe blockchain can be used for this purpose. So that was really the spark that led me down the path to the Tezio project and the Tezio Wallet project.
Well, I think
I mean,
it's
it's
a
certainly
really unique unique sort of Tezos origin story. The connection with the bees I find really fascinating. First of all, why is it important to know the temperature of the different parts of a beehive?
Well, have either of you ever seen the inside of a colony of
Only
bees?
on TV.
only
So
in cartoons.
I wish I had. So one, I'll just give you a few um, examples. So when bees build comb, the comb is their home. The queen will lay eggs, and these eggs will develop into the new generation of bees. They store pollen and nectar, which they turn into honey in this comb. So it's their home. And a lot of these activities that they're doing have temperature signatures. So, for example, the brood where there's new baby bees being grown, uh, they will endeavor to keep the temperature in that area right around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's just the ideal temperature for development. Um, so if you got this sort of 2 or 3 dimensional picture of the temperature profile inside the colony, you can determine things like how much brood is there. Are they raising new bees? They in the winter months they cluster together to stay warm. So in my data, you can see this. There's a cluster of of of, of high temperature in the data, and you're like, there they are. There's the cluster. So that's just 2 examples. But temperature is really important. Regulating temperature is really important to a lot of stuff that bees do.
So the data that you're collecting, the end goal is to build out this 3D model of what's actually happening within the confines of the hive.
Right. So I'm starting out. This is will give you a 2 dimensional picture of what the temperature's like. But if you have a typical hive could have 8 or 10 of those frames in one box, and in the hive, if it's a really big colony, you can have multiple boxes. So you could build this up into 32, 64, hundreds of sensors giving you data about what's going on inside the colony.
Okay,
I
so
mean, like,
there you are. You're collecting this data, right? You're building out this 3D model, and at some point, I assume there was a moment when you put the pieces together. You'd already been experimenting with blockchain. What was that aha moment when you decided that blockchain was the right solution for the sort of the problem of building the model that you were trying to build?
When was it? Well, I don't know if I can pinpoint the exact moment, but it went something like this. The typical way. So these devices. Here's a got a. So this isn't a platform that I built. But it looks similar. You got these little tiny microcontroller devices that have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, and you want a way to um, connect these devices to a larger network of devices. So the typical way this is done with IoT is um, you would use a cell phone and the Bluetooth connection um, to provision the device and get it connected. Um, and it just occurred to me that with blockchain, this particular device right here, which is one of the devices that's the focus of the Tezio project, has a cryptographic coprocessor built into it. So not only can it securely store keys, it can do cryptographic functions like signatures and verifying signatures. So it occurred to me that if you have a device that is secure and has a unique identity that no other device in the universe has, because it's got its private key. And if that device is generating data and signing that data, you can always verify that that data came from that device and no other device. And so that was, that realization is what took me in this direction. And the first step here is this Tezio hardware wallet. But really, I see this as the first step of a bigger project, which we can talk about later. But really is about, typically you think of a hardware wallet as something you plug into a PC to interact with the blockchain, to sign transactions, that sort of thing. But I see this as the first step of building autonomous devices that can interact with the blockchain without, that PC connection.
I mean, as Stu said, it is definitely one of the more original ventures into blockchain that we've heard of here on TezTalks Radio. So to actually dig into the project that you're currently working on, for those that are actually unfamiliar with the terminology, what exactly is an Arduino wallet? Like, what differentiates it from any other type of crypto wallet that we have in the market?
Right. Well, Arduino is a really an ecosystem of open source hardware and software. I have a couple of them here. This is an Arduino board. This is really probably the most popular board, and it's been around for well over a decade now, called the Arduino Uno. And it's and then this one that I showed earlier is called a Nano 33 IoT. It's a more modern platform, but they're both Arduino in the sense that they're part of this ecosystem of hardware and software. So it's all open source. So the hardware, anybody with the desire and ability could clone a fully functional Arduino, and so the microcontroller, sensor nodes that I've made for my Beehive project, I've designed those and made them to be Arduino compatible, and it's really, so Arduino has become maybe this term's fallen out of favor a little bit, but the maker culture, a tool of the maker movement, the sort of technologically enabled do-it-yourself culture, and that means that there's a huge community of Arduino contributors,
Mm-hmm.
and which makes it a pleasure to develop on. You have all this this body of work to draw from that's open source. So now I got into so Arduino. What I found is it's a way of getting students into microcontrollers and microcontroller programming, where the barriers to entry are relatively small, so to the point where
Mm-hmm.
I've developed this course called physical computing, where I take students who have never had a computer science course before and have never had an electronics course, and in one semester, teach them a great deal about programming these things. Most of the programming is done in C++, and to the point where students who aren't even scientists, art majors, have taken this class, and they're very creative and have all kinds of interesting use cases for Arduino. So for me, I've been working with the Arduino ecosystem for a long time, and I noticed that there's similarities between that community and the Tezos community. It's just a good community to be a part of. So I think it's a good idea to introduce the Arduino community to Tezos. I think that there's who knows what use cases are out there. We're very much at the beginning of all of this.
Right. So essentially what we're looking at is, like you said, this ecosystem of software and hardware that offers more technological capabilities, but you've also got a community of users and builders that mirror those on Tezos. So you think there's a natural synchrony between the two. And also, as you said, that the barrier to entry is lower and that it can also be used as an education tool. So I think in that, you've painted a very strong picture for the merits of Arduino. But then how does that work its way into the Tezio wallet that you're building? Like, what features are you incorporating into it that you feel are going to ultimately benefit the Tezos community?
Well, so first off, this Tezio Wallet project. The goal is to basically there's no hardware development that's part of this project. It's all software. The goal is to provide the software tools so anybody can pick up one of these Arduino devices and turn it into a hardware wallet. And these are $25. To pick one up and be able to use it as a hardware wallet. Um, so there's no, in other words, a tool that people who are not electronics savvy would be able to use. But at the same time, to enable anybody who picks these up to then start doing experiments with the Tezos blockchain. So the goal, with this device, I mentioned earlier that it's got a cryptographic coprocessor on it. And what exactly does that? There's a microcontroller on this device, and the cryptographic coprocessor is a client to the microcontroller. And but this coprocessor can do a number of things. One thing it can do, it's got a random number, a true random number generator on it. So you can use it to create secret keys that are secure. It's got a secure element, so you can store data in it, and you can, depending how you store it, you can do encrypted reads and writes of that data if you need access to it. But it's also got the capability to store secret keys in a way that's completely inaccessible, can never be read, can never be destroyed electronically, written over. And even if you took this thing apart and probed it with an electron microscope, you'd never be able to determine what that secret key is. So it's completely secure, but then you can use it because the coprocessor can derive the public key for that secret, and it can also do signing operations and verifying operations with that secret key. So it can do these things that are important for interacting with blockchain with zero possibility of ever revealing what your secret key is. And you think, well, maybe that's not ideal because if this thing gets destroyed, you lose your secret key. But from my perspective, you can always back up your mnemonic phrase to recover your key. But from my perspective, ultimately what I'm after here is really low cost devices that can interact with the blockchain. And if they should be destroyed, the whole purpose is to verify the provenance of the data that's coming from the device. So if the device is destroyed, you don't need the key anyways. You just create a new one.
Okay. So as I said, I find it a really interesting use case. So I've talked to a couple of people about it, and in some of those conversations, I've heard Arduino hardware described as a niche technology. From your perspective, is that how you view it, or do you believe it has the potential to be applied in solving real world problems more commonly in the future?
Definitely it can. Arduino does make their line of hardware includes hardware that's meant for a more industrial or professional use case. Arduino's real strength, though, is to be able to do rapid prototyping. So you can prototype your system, test your designs, test your code, and but you wouldn't really rely on Arduino. Let's say you're going to do something and then mass produce it. You would then proceed to take your design, create your custom circuit boards, whatever, and then send it to the manufacturer to produce. So Arduinos are, I guess they're both those things. There is a niche for hardware like this, predominantly if you're desiring a platform that you can do rapid prototyping on, or education. That's one of the things that Arduino is really good for, is teaching fundamentals of programming hardware and developing electronics. I should point out that a lot of computer programmers don't really think too much about the hardware that their code is running on. If your goal is to program microcontrollers, you really don't have that luxury, because these are resource constrained environments. They're this to give you an example, this is again the Arduino Uno. You may be familiar with these mnemonic phrases that you can use to back up your secret keys, your private keys, and the vocab, for the words for this mnemonic phrase are too much to store on this device. So that's 2,000 words can't store it on this device. So that's just an example. You're working in a very resource constrained environment, CPU, memory, RAM, all those things. So you're operating at a very low level, so you can be humble.
Well, you mentioned that it's a good tool to use for prototyping, and I'm curious about that, particularly in terms of you mentioned a while back about IoT, Internet of Things devices, where obviously IoT is becoming a bigger sort of part of daily life as we get more of these smart devices. I'm curious about the link between Internet of Things devices and blockchain. Do you see that as being the blockchain playing a significant role in that? And is that something that you feel like Tezos is well suited to help you with?
So one aspect of IoT, really one aspect of our world, is just the explosion of data. There's it's data overload. You can have these embedded devices in your environment producing huge quantities of data, and that's so if the question is blockchain the place where that data will be stored, I would say probably not. The blockchain, at least on level one, is it's not designed to store. It's a distributed system. It's not designed to store huge quantities of data. What it's designed to do is to be able to be able to verify data. And I definitely see that that's there's huge potential for that. At least I think there is. So the idea here is that these IoT devices generating data could be sending that data to a traditional database that could be parsed, and all this, very very centralized,
Mm.
very very fast. You can parse the data, you can process it, but you can include with the data, cryptographic signatures that would you allow you to verify that data. So the information needed to verify the data could be stored on the blockchain, but not the data itself.
I mean, thank you so much for that really thorough technological overview. And I think that's actually going to help break down a lot of complex concepts in a way that people can actually understand and perhaps even begin engaging with all of this. But to zoom out a little bit further, beyond the Tezio Wallet, can you tell us a bit more about, the Tezos Commons Small Grants program that you're participating in, and like what your experience has actually been in terms of engaging with this process?
Well, it's been a pleasure. I was, before we started, I was saying that, as a professor, you are on a 9-month contract, and usually, and the summer months are an opportunity to, if everything is going the way it should, the summer months are an opportunity to recharge your creative energy and to really spend time doing scholarship and creative works. And I had been working on a variety of Tezos and blockchain related projects and posting on Twitter, some Python code for doing this interesting algorithm for taking a secret and splitting it into chunks so that you can then reconstruct the secret from the parts. But the cool thing is you don't need all the parts to reconstruct the secret, and stuff like that, and posting it on Twitter, sharing it on Twitter, and then I had been doing working on this Tezio Wallet, and the cryptographic primitives, all the things that you need to be able to do things like convert a random number into a mnemonic phrase, and take that mnemonic phrase and generate a master seed, and do hashing, and all these things that are are part of turning random numbers into the things that you do on the blockchain. And then I posted that on Twitter, and somebody, I don't remember who, encouraged me to apply for Tezos Commons grant. And I had heard about the Tezos Common grants before that, and so I did. And I went to the website. It was painless. It took me, the actual amount of text I wrote was small, but it took me about a half a day to really distill what I wanted to say into a couple paragraphs. Apply through the website, and then there was a follow-up communication. There was about a 40-minute Zoom call when I discussed the project with some reps from Tezos Commons, and then it was funded. So it was very painless, and it's been a pleasure so far. Um, and yeah, I'm really excited about this project and working with Tezos Commons now and in the future.
And so aside from funding, what other kinds of support has, the Tezos community on a broader scale offered or provided in terms of helping you build out this wallet?
Well, I would say that, when it comes to doing Tezos on Arduino, there's I'm the only person that I know of that's doing that. The in general, the the like, I'll give you an example. Like, a project that's been really helpful to me is PyTezos, the Python Tezos library. Digging into that source, it gives you a world of knowledge about how things work, and just trying to wrap my mind around the around blockchain and what it's good at, what it's not good at. I've been able to do a couple workshops. I did a workshop last winter, sponsored by Nomadic Labs, on smart contracts. I really think that anybody who's developing in blockchain should really spend some time trying to understand what smart contracts are. It's really enlightening because it really teaches you, um, what blockchain is for, but more importantly, what it's not for. And
Mhm.
so I've been fortunate to be able to do that, and it's it's I did another one recently with on LIGO, um, programming with Tezos Israel,
Mhm.
and so those sorts of things are really helpful. They're
Mhm.
not directly tied to this project, but they are they give me more of a broad picture understanding of what the blockchain is and what Tezos in particular is.
So
Okay.
essentially, you've got both the support of funding through the small grants program, but also a massive educational material that actually teaches you the fundamentals. And I think you touched upon something critical, which is what not only what blockchain is for, but what it's not, and understanding the distinction between the two.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Well, as Marissa said, like we're all very excited to sort of see where this project eventually leads us.
Mhm.
Do you have any picture of when this will be available for public consumption? Do you have like a launch date in place?
So, I mean, right now there's, you can go to the project's website is tezio.cc, tezio.cc, and there's a link to the GitHub repository where uh, the initial release is the cryptographic primitives that focuses on, one thing about Tezos in particular is there's support for three different elliptic curves, and the most prominent one used in Tezos is the Edwards, the ED25519 elliptic curve, which is it's what gives you the public key hashes with the TZ1 um, uh, prefix. But it also supports the elliptic curve that Bitcoin uses, and another one that NIST has created. But that initial release was just focusing on this Edwards curve, the TZ1 that results in the TZ1 addresses. As of right now, I'd say that there's really three parts to this project. One part is to implement support for the other two elliptic curves that are supported by Tezos. In particular, the curve that I mentioned about that's was created by NIST. It's called the uh, NIST P256 curve. That's the curve that gives rise to Tezos addresses that are TZ3 prefixes, and that's in particular is important because that's a curve that has hardware support in the cryptographic coprocessor on the Arduino boards, and a lot of other IoT devices have hardware support for that curve, which means you get all the benefits of the speed and the security of that. So that's one part, in support for all three elliptic curves. Another part is support for this cryptographic coprocessor, so I can leverage its resources. And then the third part is um, to lay the foundation of an API so that people can interact with the wallet. And in particular, the goal there, I think, in order to have a minimally functional wallet, you need to be able to send messages to that wallet and have the wallet sign them, and get that signature back so you can include it with your transactions. So those three parts, I would say, mostly done with part 1 and 2. In that I have all the parts. There's a few parts. I got some notes on my board back there that I still have to figure out. Um, and then once I have all those parts done, I'll just, I got to clean up my code and refactor it so it's in something that's, useful to share. And so probably by the end of July, I'll release those 2 parts, and then the API for doing, for interacting with the wallet. And then after that, I think, what would really make this nice is if I could get some support from, one of the other, software wallet developers like Temple Wallet, and integrate this into their wallet so that it becomes fully functional.
Have you started making contact with any of them, or is that something that has to wait till you finish the first bit?
I haven't yet. I don't think it's too soon to do that. At this point, I would say contact has been one way, in that I've spent a lot of time in their GitHub repository. But it's at that, when it gets to the point where I have a working device that you can make API calls to using from a computer, using a serial port, then I'll be turning my attention to that aspect more completely.
So it's a super interesting project. Obviously you have a lot to say about it. You've spent a lot of time thinking about it. We could ask you a million questions about it. Unfortunately, we've just about run out of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention about the project, or anything else that you're working on before we come to the end?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned earlier more of my longtime view of what this hardware project is. Sort of the first step in a bigger project of enabling internet-connected devices to interact with the blockchain without human participants and or even connections to PCs. And so that's really where I hope to see this go. So I hope that this is the first step of a project that I'm involved in for many years. Another aspect is, I really do think that blockchain is really in its infancy, and the ups and downs that we've seen recently are to be expected. And I really think that in order to make distributed, permissionless, open networks, blockchains useful to lots of people, people are going to have to be educated about what blockchain is and what it isn't. Mm. And so I have goals of a course development focused in cryptography and blockchain. So that's another aspect of the Tez.io project that's going forward.
Well, it's certainly needed.
Yeah, I really, we're expecting a future where people take custody of their, personal custody of their assets, and I think people really need to understand what that means, and in order to feel comfortable doing that. And then, another thing is, I want to participate in the Tezos network, so I started baking, and just today I was like, okay, I'm ready, got enough experience baking, and opened up my baker, making it public. So if anybody wants to delegate to my baker to help support this project, the details are on the website. There's a link to Tez.io Bakery, tezio.cc, and you can get all the details there.
Well, the most important thing is having a clever name for your for people to delegate to?
Well, you can, that those big long addresses. I was a little, one feature. If anybody's out there and wants a feature um, that I think will be beneficial is, um, right now when you delegate from the popular wallets, you need to know the the address, right? You need to know the TZ address. Um, but we have this great tool in the Tezos domains, so why can't you just put in the Tezos domain when you delegate? So I think that would be a pretty useful project. And, I got the TEZIO Tezos domain. So
Perfect.
easy.
You're all set.
That's another way you can look up the bakery address.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out of your doubtless very busy schedule to speak with us today. It's always awesome to hear from the folks building projects like this in the Tezos ecosystem. Thanks to the audience for joining us today. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today, as always, has been my co-host Marissa True, and our guest has been Dr. Jeff Groff, professor, beekeeper, and now Tezos builder. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.